Openness and transparency are words that we hear a lot, and with good reason. They are important principles of good government. Our legislature and indeed the public cannot hold government to account without an adequate knowledge of what's actually going on. And many people are concerned across Prince Edward Island that access to what is going on is not as easy as it should be. Question to the Premier. Why are islanders, whether it's legislative office staff or members, part of the media, or indeed private citizens, waiting unprecedented lengths of time to receive government information?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable Leader for the question. I do believe that openness and transparency are the fundamentals of good democracy. I think that we all have to remember, as has been said in here many times, that we're just merely representatives of the people. The information that we deal with needs to be protected in some cases to protect the privacy of those individuals, but it is the information of the people. So I think we try our hardest, Mr. Speaker. I'd be interested to see where the leader is going just in terms of where the stalemate might be, but I'm committed to openness and transparency and will try to help in every way that I can. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. 3 years ago, during a review of the FOIP legislation, our office made a long list of recommendations to leapfrog our province to the front of the line when it comes to access to information, to become leaders in transparency and accountability. And today we have a new administration with apparently a new commitment to being open. A question again to the Premier. What has your government done to date to improve access to information? And what are the specifics of your administration's planned FOIP review?
The Honourable Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think the specifics of trying to review any of the processes of government are to try to make it as the best that it can be. The Honourable Leader has been here longer than me, and he has extensively more experience when it comes to the FOIP legislation than I do, admittedly. I think that we are committed as a government to trying to make that process as easily accessible information-wise as possible. I think there's a challenge within government just in dedicating the proper resources within each department that we're trying to work on an individual basis. I was part of a government, Mr. Speaker, as an employee and an advisor that implemented the FOIP legislation, which I think was long overdue and needed. And I would like to try to work with all partners to make it the best it can be for islanders. And I think all governments in this seat, Mr. Speaker, should appreciate very, very active and open and transparent level of government.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the balance that legislation of this type is trying to achieve is between the access to information and the legitimate protection of private information that's quite appropriately kept locked up. However, it seems to me that the long delays and the obstructive habits that have developed with this administration seem more to have to do with a reluctance to divulge information that should be readily available rather than valid protection of sensitive information. To the Premier, why is your government being so opaque when it comes to providing information that should be readily available?
The Honourable Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't believe we are being opaque. There are situations, I think we are all dealing with a situation through the Minister of Agriculture and Land where there was frustrations on all sides of governments in terms of making sure a document can be released that I think all people need to see, Mr. Speaker, but at the same time protect the privacy of those individuals that need to be protected. I know there was some people suggesting that that document should just be released and let it sit there, but at the same time, when I came to government, Mr. Speaker, as the Premier, I did go to work and asked individuals to settle a case against whistleblowers where information of a private nature was distributed without their knowledge and it was harmful to them, and they rightfully sued the government, and that case was settled, Mr. Speaker. So it is a fine line. The freedom of information and the protection of privacy is a very fine line, but I believe we're doing the best we can, Mr. Speaker, and we'll continue to do so.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thanks. The Premier referred to, I think, as a stalemate, but it's sort of a gridlock situation where information is just getting more and more difficult to get. It becomes a sort of a vicious circle as information gets more tightly protected, leading to more requests, leading to longer delays. So we could provide excess resources, or more resources, I should say, to the APSO office to deal with this, but a far more sensible approach would be to automatically make a range of material available to the public without having to enter into this vortex of opacity, or what's known as proactive disclosure, that releasing of information automatically. This already happens in a lot of jurisdictions and was recommended in our submission a few years ago. A question to the Premier: what materials will you make accessible by default?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe we're trying to be obstructive in any way. I do believe there's a balance of what can be provided in the time frame in which it is provided, and I think we can all agree to disagree sometimes on whether that process is as good as it can be, and I think we need to continue to work to make sure that the process is the best that it can be, Mr. Speaker. But I don't believe we're sitting on any information because we don't want to get it out there. Any information that is legally to be provided, we do, Mr. Speaker. We're bound by law to do that, and we do. I know it's a frustrating process, and I know there's a lot more information that people from all walks of life are trying to gain from government, Mr. Speaker, which is a good thing. But proactive disclosure, I think, is a good idea. I think this legislation is maturing, and it needs to continue to mature, and I keep a very open mind to that, and would deal with the experts in my department and beyond to make sure we can do that legally. But yeah, I think that would be a great idea, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, Belvedere.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.